transcend even that, so that we can forget and move forward as a more free person. Human psychology states that we love to keep storing things even though we don't require them. And the best example for that is our garage. Though today bravely both Venkatji and Vishnuji have opened their garage through which they have asked us to come, right? You had to do a lot of cleaning. By the way, thank you for having us here, and I invoke Gurudev and Lord's blessing on you and the entire family, so that you have a great life ahead. So the garage is quite a display, and when one of the house members feels frustrated, pulls out all the things and said, either we trash it or garage sale. And then you come inside and announce that I have tried removing all the unnecessary. Check if you have to bring certain things inside which I may have thought is not necessary. So the husband or wife goes outside, some of it comes inside, the children go, most of it comes inside, and the garage seems to be in the same condition as it was earlier. The spoons, the nuts, the bolts, the newspapers, the newspaper clipping, cutting, I don't know what not, everything is still there. And imagine a similar condition within. And we usually blame God, that God has given us this dirty mind. Poor God has not given us a dirty mind, but He has given us one of the most efficient systems. Efficient and the most beautiful systems called mind. Our mind is one of the most, if you closely observe its pattern of work, you will be amazed how it has been interfaced. But in spite of that, it is like, I'm told that these brand name bags, purses and things like that, they cost quite a bit. A long time ago, 10, 11 years ago, when I was first time in Miami, so I was going through downtown, and those kids still tease me for that pronunciation. And I have this habit of reading out loud when I have to learn something. The best way is to make a mistake and somebody will correct it and learn from it. So I read it as verses. And all these kids who were around me, they laughed and they said, say it again, I said, verses. They said, it's not verses, it is Versace. So who in heaven will know that Versace is Versace? Coming from India, our pronunciations are different. We never thought that it would be Ohio, it is Ohio. Right? And the best was, after coming here, it's when, most of the other pronunciations I had learnt it back there. One which was quite, my jaw dropped when I heard the pronunciation was Kinkinati. It's only after coming here I realized that it was not Cincinnati, it was Cincinnati. S-I-N sin, C-I-N kin. That was the logic. They say that these bags, Versace, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, did I pronounce it right? Okay. How much do they cost?
Hundreds of dollars.
Get me one. If it is hundreds of dollars, get me one. Let me ask the appropriate crowd. Mother sitting here. Thousands of dollars. Minimum is thousands. And the best part is somebody gifted it to you. If you have to buy it, it can pinch you somewhere. But if somebody has gifted it and you get that gift and you carry it to one of these satsangs, not for a display, but just utility purpose. You bring it to this, and then one of these swamis or somebody that or puja or something, they gave you a prasad, a banana, and you put it in that bag. Usually Columbus is not that hot, but unusually today it is about 74, 73, 74. And you left that purse, that bag in your car, went inside for a couple of hours, and in that heat, the banana started cooking. It started cooking, wherein all the trapped heat, it was like a convection oven, wherein it started cooking inside. And as soon as you stepped inside your car after your work, how does the car smell? It smells wonderful. It's like somebody who has put a banana perfume. I never thought of it that way. Because even the thought is like banana perfume. Anyway, that will go into my next book. So you step into that with banana perfume and you quickly look at your bag, and the first thing, the banana goes out. And the next immediate thing that you do is you are feeling really sad, feeling bad that the bag has been now. So what do you do with that bag? Somebody gave me a very beautiful solution recently when I gave it. They said, no, what I'm going to give is a better one. Just put it on eBay.
Yes.
So we have, and because it is a costly and a very good one and you like it, you don't immediately give it to Salvation Army or put it on eBay. You try cleaning it, drying it up, making sure that it is aerated or whatever it requires to clean it up, and finally get rid of the smell. And if there was a leaking issue of the banana, and clean that up as well. Now, for that matter, at this moment, I've been advised never to touch, but at this moment, as an example, if I were to pick any one of your purses, I will not. Don't give me that scared, threatening look. I'm not going to. If suppose I do so, isn't it that we have, I'm just making a vague guess, you can correct me. How much of it is really a necessary thing that is there inside? And how much of it is something that can be trashed? You tell. I have no experience.
There's nothing much but that trash.
I have people that I can trash, but I've got, because you pay the bills, they're like, oh, shove it in, shove it in.
And especially if you are having tiny little kids, man, that purse is supposed to be like a magician's hole, and the mother can dish out all kinds of things, from stain remover to chewing gum to rubber band to pin to toys to I don't know what not. First aid kit, everything starts coming out.
Yes.
Yeah, Dora's backpack. Our mind is like that beautiful bag that has been gifted by God. And it's one of a kind. I'm told if you get something which is like one of a kind, it is a rare thing, right? How do you preserve it?
Carefully.
Don't use it much.
Like most of the jewelry that we have, where do you have? You maintain it really cautiously and very carefully use it, even if you have to use it. Right? Now Bhagavan has given us, God has given us this beautiful system called mind, and in that bag, generations of kachada that we have put in. Kachada, garbage. Trash that we have added in, and we carry it glamorously. We carry that peace of mind glamorously. And the worst part, we compare it. That how glamorously each one of us is carrying. And compete. And competing for what? The trash.
I remember, you don't remember.
There are so many things that one of the worst kind of things that we trash in and carry that burden of is based out of our interactions. And this, let me put the disclaimer today right in the beginning, is to be applied on your own self rather than at a global level. Because we have this tendency, especially listening to philosophy, that if you listen something which can be applied at a particle level or at a microcosmic level, we immediately expand it to a macrocosmic level and say, oh, it cannot be applied there. And if something is given as a grand view from a macrocosmic level, we immediately burn it, but it is not applicable in my level. There are with reference to standpoint. This, what we are going to discuss, is purely at the personal level. So one of the things that we carry with lot of burden are all the pain, hurt and misery which is our interaction with those whom we call the loved ones. If you do not have any loved ones, you do not have the vulnerability of being hurt. There's one solution right away. The chair, what do you call this? This is a chair, right? Or whatever you call this that I am sitting on. It does not have any attachment, any love towards anybody. So who sits, how much weight sits on it, it doesn't bother it. You can get to that kind of a vegetative state, wherein you don't need to be entangled with anybody. But is that an ideal condition? Maybe in my condition it may be applicable, because bache. But in a grihastha's life, especially, wherein you have 4 or 5 members within the immediate family, like wife, husband, children, then you have in-laws, parents, outlaws, all of them put together, immediate family, then friends as a circle. And your love towards these people becomes your own vulnerability of getting hurt by them. Isn't it a vulnerability? Can you avoid it? Can you avoid these relationships? Though many a family dialogue, many common dialogues within family is when they get frustrated, they say that I'll go to Haridwar or Rishikesh and give up everything and be done with all these things. Long time ago, when I was almost 20 years ago, when I was a new brahmachari into the field, I was staying at somebody's house and this couple right in front of me, they started fighting with each other really horribly. And I was like, my jaw dropped and I was watching like a tennis match. The wall is here and there, and she said, he said. And finally he banged the door and said, I'm going to Rishikesh, giving up everything, done with this thing. And this Amma, she was putting her pallu or something inside. She took that pallu and dusted it off and went into the kitchen. And I was stuck in between, like, what happened just now? So I went slowly into the kitchen. Amma, why didn't you stop him? Sachi mein nikal gaya to. If he really has gone. His Haridwar Rishikesh is the tea stall on the... I have been married to this fellow for about 32 years. Now nothing can happen. If you don't trust me, go check it out yourself. And if you do trust me, stay here for another 30-40 minutes, he'll come. Her exact words is, "Dum daba ke fir aayega." When you hear such responses, you know that after that many years of marriage, these kind of dialogues are possible. You make an observation. So when you do get frustrated, you want to abandon everything, but you can't. It is not ideal. So how do you deal with this vulnerability wherein you have to love them and yet not carry that kind of frustration, of pain, frustration of hurt? So first thing that you have to understand is it's only those whom you love intensely can hurt you. Some Tom, Dick and Harry outside may even look at you nastily or even say something bad. But it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't penetrate. Can it? Some Tom, Dick and Harry doing or commenting something is like listening to a Vedantic lecture. That doesn't penetrate, this doesn't penetrate. It's only those who you love can hurt. Right? First point. How do you handle that hurt? You cannot avoid it. How you can handle it is what we have to learn. So most of the experiences that we go through, if we understand the Karma Yoga Siddhanta, principle of Karma Yoga, and the reason I called it principle of Karma Yoga and not a theory of Karma Yoga, it doesn't, because it does not depend upon our belief system. It is something like the principle of electricity. Whether you believe in it or not, it exists and it functions according to its regulations. Do you believe it or not? I'm little inspired. Has anybody got not the static but the true electric shock? Anybody who did not get a shock? Did not get a shock?
Never touched anything.
You also did not get a shock?
I mean, like the iron, like I touched a hot iron, but that's it.
Hot iron is it will
No,
burn you.
here in room you don't have that.
Yeah.
No, India we do that.
नहीं यहाँ पे भी लगता है
Yeah,
shock.
हमारे में
अरे रे. So can I take you as a guinea pig right now? Static different. This is electric circuit. I'll open the socket.
I know I did have you.
Whether you believe in it or not, it functions. Right? Supposing you fall asleep inadvertently, not consciously, inadvertently, your hand falls on a live wire. Does a live wire give you a notice? Knock, knock. Or does a live wire think, बेचारा सो रहा है ना, poor girl is sleeping. I should give him this terrible experience called shock. Does a live wire think? Immediately you will have the impact of a divine experience called shock. Back in India, I have had lots of minor little shocks. One major one was, in India we never use pliers to cut open the wire. So we use our teeth. So I was in charge for, this was in school. I was 8th, 9th grade and I was in charge for the PA system. And it was an annual function. Somebody tripped over, there was somebody, and they were all looking at me, the pressure was mounting up. So usually I'm careful, but that day because of that pressure I forgot that that wire which snapped out, the copper wire was not visible. I put it in my mouth only to realize that that was a live wire. That was my moment of realization. I realized electricity. Whether you believe in it or not, the principle works. Similarly is Karma Siddhanta. Whatever be your religion, wherever you are living, whatever, whether your belief system doesn't matter, Siddhanta works. That's why I'm calling it a principle. So according to Karma Yoga Siddhanta, yesterday also we saw it briefly, that as you sow, so you reap. Let me take an example. What have you studied? Masters? Masters in management. How many years of that masters? So after studying 2 years for MBA, do you suddenly become a lawyer? And you can add it in your wish list. But what is the reality? You can't. Whatever is the effort, in whatever direction, you will end up being to what you have sown. Otherwise, suddenly I sleep and wake up and I am already a doctor. Does it happen? It doesn't happen. So you perform a karma and you sow those seeds, and accordingly it will reap that result. As we sow, so we reap. A very simple principle. So every experience that I am undergoing today as it is unfolding, what is my disclaimer? This is only applicable at a personal level. I am making that very clear again. because there are a lot of new influx of people that have joined in, so I'm making myself clear again. So whatever experience today is unfolding as I have to go through it, who has sown that seed for this experience to unfold? In my life, my experience, I was the one who have not just sown the seed, nourished it to reap what I am going through at this particular moment. You being here at this moment, if taken as an example, you being here, is it an incident or an accident?
It's an incident.
How can you say it that surely? You choose to be here and your choice has led you here. Now if you see, pata nahi kahan pe aa gaya. I'm sorry. Everything that we go through in life is nothing but a incident. And those for which we are not able to ascertain the valid reason as to why I am going through it, we may end up calling it as accident. Otherwise, there are no accidents in life, there are only incidents. Whether I know it or not, whether I am conscious about it or not, I am here in this particular intersection of my unfolding experience because consciously or unconsciously I have designed it, made choices to be at this intersection at this moment, not otherwise. And since we are talking about it, I will tell you one more point about it so that it gives a completeness to the logic. What comes in my life is destiny, or whatever else you want to call it. Fate, destiny, prarabdha, these are all different words, synonymous. What I do or how I do with what I get is where you have a choice. That is called Purushartha. When they talk about freedom, it is not freedom in choosing what kind of experience that I have to go through. That is where we get seriously confused. And sometimes it leads to a disenchantment with life, wherein we feel that we don't have that choice, that freedom of choice to go through what I feel like going through. We may not have that choice. What we definitely have a choice is how we go through it. Supposing this particular lecture series today is boring, and you have come with your friend who has insisted that you should come, and you have been trapped. You have a freedom of choice. And what is the freedom of choice? Maybe it is so compelling that the friend will feel bad. For the sake of the friend, they are squeezed in there.
They drove me here.
See, they drove me here, I cannot go. Thank you, sir, but which side are you?
I guess you'll be glad by the end of it.
Hopefully. No, he has been coming for 3 days, so he doesn't have. You can sleep through the lecture. You have a choice. How you go through it, you have a choice. But we make a mistake in trying to avoid it, trying to think, I have the freedom if I have to go through it or not. Then we don't have a freedom. We have a freedom of how I choose to go through it. Do I go through it miserably? Do I go through it gladly? Do I go through it sadly? Do I go through it indifferently? That choice, freedom I have. But I go through it, I must. Like this much is clear. Who has sown the seed? I have sown the seed. I'm just going so that you don't miss the logic. Who has sown the seed? So whatever is the intersection of life that I am going through, who is the key triggering factor? I. Now what God has done is for whatever good, bad, ugly, indifferent things that we have done in the past, which we have sown, they have to unfold as results. Now those results cannot, suddenly, the first word that came, tappofy. They cannot just drop in from vacuum. It has to come through someone, some situation, some experience. Am I clear? Because the twist is coming, बहुत भारी पड़ेगा. So the result that I have to go through comes through different people that are around me. Isn't there a saying in English? Don't shoot.
The messenger.
Who said it? No, there was a young voice. You said it? Maybe from that side. Don't shoot the messenger. If somebody is delivering a message, you don't like the message. Do you bash that fellow up? You fellow, how dare you bring this message? Because that is what we think God is. Who is God? God is somebody like, have you gone to Chuck E. Cheese? But you have, right?
Yes.
In the past 10 years they have not changed, in 20 years also they would not have changed. There is this particular little console or game wherein they have the sharks jumping up. You have a hammer and you whack them. Do you think God is sitting like that? That today whom do I pick? Let me pick this fellow. Oh, whack him. And whether it is being whacked at, whether it is whatever we are going through, it is coming through them, those who are around us, but not by them. Does it make a difference? Do you catch the difference? Whatever painful moment that I am going through, or a glad moment or indifferent moment that I am going through as an experience, which is a result of my known or unknown past actions, it is coming through that environment around me. If it is just coming through them, why do we get angry? Why do we get frustrated? Why do we shoot and nail those people as responsible for my moment of pain or hurt that I am going through? Are they even responsible? And if you look at life with this perspective, can you complain with anybody at all? About anybody at all? So far what you have heard, does it sound logical?
Yes.
It was not an emphatic yes.
Is that the principle, or is that how you are just training your mind?
This is Karma Yoga Siddhanta, principle.
This is like training your mind, because sometimes you might have not done anything wrong in past, but you got bad stuff from people.
गलती भगवान से कभी नहीं होता.
No, people around you, that's what we're talking about, right?
They come through them.
But why that particular person? You haven't done anything wrong to the person. Why is it coming from that particular person?
On the flip side, for those people whom you have done good, have they ever returned back the amount of good that you have done to them?
That makes sense.
Point and case.
It's not a two-way street, it's a circle.
It's a circle. As you sow, so you reap. We do an injustice to the Siddhanta of Karma Yoga by delivering the statement as, do your best, leave the rest. Just because it sounds good, rhythmic and rhymes, it is not the true translation of Karma Yoga Siddhanta. There are a lot of nitty-gritty details which has to be understood. One of them is that whatever experience that you are going through, it is your own experience that you have sown. And you are going through it. If suppose you go to a restaurant. In that restaurant, you gave an order. And he is writing down all the order. Like if I go to a restaurant, I have too many parameters that I look. That the closest Thai restaurant that I have been going for 10 years, I have trained him well. As soon as I step in, he knows Swami special. Because he knows that no soy, no garlic, no onion, no fish sauce, oyster sauce. First time he said, then what will you eat? No tofu. Then what will you eat? So I sat with the cook. And instead of soy, you can use salt. Yeah, that's a good substitute. So you give these parameters and order. And then later you change your mind and you look at what you get and say you don't like it. What else can you do but finish it? But if you have ordered something and what has come is not up to the mark, you can demand. Like yesterday we went to a restaurant here and they gave a chutney. And the chutney was smelling from distance that it had marked its date.
Expiry.
So we did, a 2 minutes silence because it was expired. Called the owner and he said, no, it smell. The smell is quite an evident proof. Then he said, oh, this is of the older batch, I'll get you a I'm not making this up.
I was there.
There is no experience that we go through which is an accident. It is something which is triggered by us. This is the Siddhanta. So the result of it that I have to go through comes only through them, not because of them or by them. If we are truly trying to become a seeker on this path of spirituality, first thing that we have to learn, stop blaming the world around us for what we are going through. Nothing in the world is responsible for what I am going through. It is only coming through them and not by them. Have you ever read through the last segment of Jesus' life? The last segment of his life is called Passions of Christ. Especially it starts from the time he is convicted by the jury of rabbis and there is a chief rabbi who convicts him, and then he is punished. So it starts from there up until his crucifixion and the miraculous escape and things later. If you read through that, I was shaken up for at least 3-4 days. Because the graphic description of things that are described, that he is whipped for 3 days continuously. Can you imagine the pain? And he is not whipped by a leather lash. He is whipped by whips which have blades, nails. At the end of the 3rd day, that there is no more blood that can ooze out of his body. Every inch of his body is lacerated. Can you visualize it? And then he is dragged into that court again. The chief rabbi is not against him. He is actually a nice, kind-hearted soul. It's the others who are jealous and want him to be punished. So I said, 3 days we have whipped him, we should let him go. They said, no, he should be crucified. So that lacerated individual is made to carry the cross across the entire city. Can you imagine the burden? With no muzzle or, his entire body is done with actually. And he carries it. And then, every time I come across this particular part, it just, twists my internals. He is nailed onto that cross. A nail or something pricks into your leg or a hand, how painful it is, we know. And he is nailed into it. 3 big nails. 2 on the hands and 1 over the feet overlapped into that cross. And look at the barbaric thing that he is made to stand. And that cross is made to stand. And the gravity works. And his entire body is supported on these 3 nails. As if that was not sufficient, at the end of the day, they sent 2 people to check. There are 2 others who are being nailed. Check if all of them are dead. So they puncture their, I think it is their spleen. From the side they puncture, and if the body is not moving or giving response, they decide that it is dead. So they puncture everybody, they puncture even Jesus. Then the main instigator, the rabbi who was against him, comes on a donkey. That must have been the mode of transport. He comes on the donkey and goes back satisfied, looking that he is dead now. He is no more. It is at this juncture that he makes the most famous statement. O Lord, forgive them. They know not what they have done. Well, that is just the first part of the statement. The later part of the statement is, when he finally comes for the judgment, when he comes in front of you, punish him not for what he has done unto me, because it was through him, not by him. Therefore, forgive him.
So all that happened to him was also caused by his past actions.
That's what he is concluding himself. That it has happened through him, not by him. Therefore, do not judge him for what has happened unto me. Whenever we go through some troubled times, just imagine a couple of scenarios. Scenario of the one that I just gave of Jesus. The entire life of Pandavas Who was there with them? Bhagavan Krishna. That Krishna who by his touch had changed this girl who was looking crooked into a beautiful damsel. What was her name? Pop quiz. What was her name? Her name was Kubja. And just by his touch, he had changed her. And he had done many miraculous things. He had lifted Govardhan Parvat. But when it came to people's lives, especially the Pandavas, he could have touched their lives and changed it forever. Did he ever change their life? But instead, what did he teach them? See, when you go through Mahabharata, it is not a fight between righteous and unrighteous. Though the final war is that. Because both Pandavas and Kauravas made their set of mistakes. Didn't they? But what is shown through Mahabharata is that, in spite of making mistakes, Pandavas had the courage to own their responsibility for their acts. And they are ready to go through the repercussions of their actions. Whereas the Kauravas did their actions and refused to own their responsibility for their own actions. And blamed it on their father and his blindness, because of which they were not entitled to become a king now. They constantly blamed only that one factor. So Pandavas were there with Krishna, who had this miraculous power to change things. But he did not. He helped them every step of their way to face it square and clean. And his message through entire Bhagavad Gita is that you are responsible for what you are going through. How you go through, you have the freedom of choice. Do not blame the people that are around you, the environment that is around you, the situation that is around you, that is around you for what you are going through. It is only through them, not by them. Now once we understand this principle, the next immediate net result of it is called forgiveness. Otherwise, externally we seem to be okay with the factor to forgive, but inside we are like a pressure cooker. We are boiling from within. We are simmering, just finding that weak moment in life wherein we are ready to burst open. And we can dig all these holes, all these pressured situations from not when in the past that we remember. Though we say our memory is poor, but our retrieval memory is very khatarnak. for the exact wrong things. And we can bring about things in such ingenious timing to blame the entire world. That immediate effect of understanding this logic in our day-to-day life, in its expression, in its practical expression, is called forgiveness. Wherein you do not carry the vengeance or repercussions towards anybody in the environment around you. However bad, ugly or overwhelming the situation be, it is not because of them, it is only through them. I mean, it is quite evident looking at the logic, staring at us, the naked truth. But we seldom look at it because it is easy. Somebody said in the middle of overwhelming situation which is going south. Some situation in the office or something going really south. If somebody knows to smile, they are able to smile because
You can blame it on others.
they know whom to blame. Bali ka bakra. And that is called MBA. My little knowledge about it. The art of trying to blame others has been conditioned so well. You can observe this even on Sundays when you do the Guru Stotram chanting. How many shlokas are there? 14 shlokas. Thank you, ji. Number bhi nahi pata hai. There are 14 of them. Everybody knows all shlokas, but not in sequence. You can see that when they start Akhanda Mandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. What is next? After that? After that? After these first 3 shlokas, then there is, if you can observe very cautiously, there is this minute pause wherein the entire congregation is waiting. And when somebody starts that first word, rest of them join from the second word. Chinmaya Vyapiya. That is when they join. By mistake, if that pause is too long and you also feel suffocated by that pause and you think you are saying the right one and you start blurting out a wrong sequence of Guru Stotra. I'm just taking one of the examples.
You become so conscious about that silence.
So yeah, and you suddenly say something and then you realize you said a wrong shloka in a wrong sequence. The fact is that the sequence, the memory is a little shaky. But then, whether it is a kid or an adult, you would see that immediately after making a mistake, they either squeeze their eye, cough, rub, scratch. Think, I was going to say the right one, it is this damn eye, this cough that disturbed me. Something that I can push that blame on. Conditioning is so deep that even for as trivial a situation as what I have just explained, we love to play these blame games. And when the blame game is falling weak, what we add into that blame game is called the decibel level. You start now screaming, yelling. Don't increase the quality of the sound, increase the quality of the logic behind that sound. Nothing around us is around us trying to nail us. It is only because what I have sown that I am getting what I am getting. If this is understood, can we have the heart to blame anybody outside? Can we blame anybody? I mean, to understand, I have been hearing this logic. For this logic to sink in and to become an experience, it took me at least 4 or 5 years. It is not that easy. Because it feels like, this experience that I am going through, I am not responsible, I am not, that resistance always keeps coming in because of that conditioning which is so deep. But for what I am going through, I alone am responsible. Nobody else is responsible. Like the other day, when you talk of sambar, which sambar is good? South Indian or North Indian?
How can North Indian sambar be good?
Or a Gujarati sambar?
Swamiji, East Indian sambar. Odisha sambar.
When you say East Indian sambar or a North Indian sambar, it is like the Christians claiming the Christian yoga and the Jewish yoga. So South Indian sambar is good, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now you go to a South Indian house. I'm taking a live example. You go to a South Indian house and you get the sambar.
That is North Indian sambar.
No. Give me some time. And they serve sambar. It is not that they usually go wrong. It is one of the most tastiest sambars ever made. That day, it comes without salt. Naturally, that is one of the conclusions. But the conclusion that I draw is, that house which makes sambar as a regular chore, then nothing can go wrong. If today it has gone wrong, it is only because it is through you and to me. Not by you. Did I not tell that time?
Was that expired chutney the same way? Does it mean that in your past life you would have served somebody that kind of...
I don't know what it is resulting it, but definitely I know I am deserving it. To go through. Whether I eat it or not is my choice. Whether I eat it or not is my choice. Now, these examples are very easy to understand. But when something overpowering, overwhelming happens, to bring this knowledge about and apply it in action, to bring that sense of acceptance that this is happening through them unto me, find that day when you find something to learn from there and grow subtler. Otherwise what we do, we get caught up in the most stupid question. And what is the most stupid question? Why? I mean, this stupidity starts from when they are 8-9 years old. You ask the children to do something, they say, why? You ask them not to do something, why not? So with these two questions, they think they are the most smart kids around, intelligent ones around. Just why and why not doesn't make you intelligent. Why is this happening? Drop the why, the answer is staring at you. This is happening to me. What is the best that I can do so that I can grow from here to a subtler, positive platform? Now what will happen if we don't learn to grow?
You'll suffer.
Suffering is there, that is natural. It is given that you will suffer. Until we grow, that experience or that pattern of experience repeats itself. Haji?
Same sambar.
same sambar. In fact, after coming into this country, I have had this opportunity to do lot of counseling. You know, the husband-wife marriage counseling, parents-children counseling and things like that. And both husband and wife, when they come, they are almost to that verge of signing the papers off. And he said, she said, he said, she said, she such a big pyramid that is putting them apart. And when you look at the basic as to where it all starts from, some inconvenience that must have triggered it, and expectations add to that. So I tell them this very logic. You both coming together has happened. Whether it is a love marriage or arranged marriage, it has happened. If you understand this entire Siddhanta of karma, are you growing to a positive level or are you going down to a negative level? If you are going down to a negative level, you can get rid of each other in this life immediately. But you are going to continue next life. कहते हैं ना कि 7 जन्मों का रिश्ता है. You are going to continue next life. Do you want to suffer next life also? Or do you want to buckle your belt, see what is the issue and grow out positively? Choice is there. What should be the choice? Every situation, it's like the doctor, right? You go to the doctor, he gives you a prescription. In the morning, afternoon, evening, repeat this particular medicine. And if the symptoms repeat, symptoms persist, what do? Repeat the medicine again. That is what they do. They will intensify the medicine a little more. Meaning the punch will be higher. They were giving you 800 milligrams, it will become 1000. If they were giving you 1000 milligrams, it will become 1200. Power will increase, right? So if you don't grow out that experience positively in the first go, in the next attempt, it is going to come back more vigorously. Do we want that situation? So stop blaming. And stop blaming, forgiveness becomes natural. Right? And when every experience is seen as a platform to learn, perfect and grow, can we look at any situation to be hanging in there as a detrimental weight or a pain inside? The moment you learn from it, it is no more a painful situation to be creating a dent in the personality, but it is long forgotten. You learn that message, you learn that wisdom from there and move forward. Thus thereby reducing the weight that we carry in life, moving forward in life lightly. When the heart is light, everything around seems to be glowing. When the heart is heavy, everything around seems to be gloomy. It's got nothing to do with the environment. This is the art of forgiving. Now, if you have any questions because of what I may have caused.
So I think one of the problems is that...
Are you stating a fact or are you asking a question?
A comment.
Okay.
That I mean, you can probably add it to it or change my thinking. But one of the problems that we have is that we don't remember when and how we sold those things. Either we conveniently have forgotten or has happened because so much in the past lives are past, we don't remember any of
I
this.
just wished that nobody would bring this logic.
So how do we, I mean, how would, that is the,
I have to now take the rescue of Gurudev's. He had used some powerful examples. And this powerful example that he has used, hey kiddos, I was okay until your decibel level was less than mine. As yours started increasing, I had to put more effort to increase. So can you reduce it a little bit? Thank you. So Gurudev's example is quite powerful, but it is a nasty example. You have to bear with it. Okay? And because he has to bear with it, you also have to bear with it. So there was this Lucknowi Nawab. And this Lucknowi Nawab had this habit of walking in the evenings. So one day he started out late. So he went into the usual route. But that day he started late, so it was getting dark. But he had, those who have this habit of, regular exercising and walking and such practice, some feel very restless if they don't do it. Yet he still continued. In the darkness he went and came back. So in the veranda he took his shoes off, went inside, and as he was stepping inside the house, there was some annoying stench. Annoying stench. So he Kaun hai? Who is there? What kind of smell is this? Can't you clean this up? So everybody said, yes, there is a terrible stench. We didn't even notice it, and they started searching for it. The whole house they searched and finally came into the veranda, and that stench was because of the shoes that he was wearing. He had walked in with. In India, the restrooms are not in a very sophisticated manner. And ये उन दिनों की बात है. So on the street side, something must have stepped. You know how these kids call it, the human poop. Must have stepped on it. As soon as you realize that it is that dirt on the chappal, you have got two solutions. What are the two solutions?
Keep it.
Clean it and keep it.
I learned from you.
First clean it and then keep it. Or if it is not worth it, throw it out.
First choice, throw it.
Now, let us get beyond the example. At that point, do you start investigating who ate, what ate, when ate, what? Does it really matter? Stench is unbearable, irritating, either you throw it or wash it. We are in such stench. Does it really matter what triggered this? What we have sown then? Does it really matter? We are in that mess. Come on, clean it up. Do it consciously so that you don't end up in another situation, another puddle like that next. Have I answered?
Yeah.
Just because I didn't want to go through this example, I avoided that logic. You by specifically picking that strand, I was forced to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the situation, I understand the logic.
Sometimes I've heard people think that, like, try to find it. I should not repeat the same mistakes, or try to find what did I do wrong, so I should not do it again unknowingly, the same mistakes. If I'm in the situation right now, so they might want to.
With every experience that I am going through, if every experience that I am going through with this kind of conscious bent of mind, that I am taking nuggets of wisdom to move forward positively, then I have learned something from there rather than remembering what wrong. So that that information goes into my next experience as to cover those things not to be repeated again. I can understand that. If it is a remote past, there is no point wasting time in trying to think, first let me find out what and then I will fix it. It doesn't serve the purpose. Yes.
What you said, the logic makes sense. And usually what I find is after these satsangs, for the 5 days, it's you're tuned into listening to all this. So the 2 weeks after the satsangs, you actually practice it. At work, at home, you really practice it. And then 2 weeks later, something else which is overwhelming or overpowering happens at work. And you can see yourself slipping into what used to be your default mode. And then either, I don't know whether one loses the courage or the patience to keep on whatever you were doing in the past 2 weeks. But I find the hardest is to sustain that enthusiasm. And you mentioned...
I have 3 solutions for it. You all heard the question. Why do we get back to the square one? I have 3 solutions for it. First solution. Venkatji is recording it, he is posting it on YouTube. So repeat it. Second solution. Attend study groups regularly. Attending study group regularly wherein different mindsets come together to analyze and go through the syllabus in a systematic regularized pattern. At that moment it may seem like, why am I doing this? I don't even need to go through this. My life is okay. Why do I need to go through this? But when you step out onto the road, there are different kinds of pegs. There is peg, that which divides the road. There are different kinds. One is a white peg. White peg is usually differentiating the lanes on the same direction. And if you are on the wrong direction, the same white peg will have a red indicator, red reflector. So there is a white peg and a red peg. There is a yellow which differentiates the road between 2 different directions. So I have said white, red, yellow. There is one specific one which is blue in color. Have you ever noted that? Yeah. What is the blue one for?
Fire hydrant next to it.
Perpendicular to that blue peg is a fire hydrant. Oh, you didn't know it?
We learned something today.
You are thus informed.
Now we'll have to.
So my question to you is, when was that fire hydrant placed? Its position, when was it designed? Way before all these houses were constructed. Way before when they were even conceiving to build a neighborhood or an establishment. It went into the design. That at that moment when it is necessary, it is accessible and ready. So study group may look repetitive. Like there was this kid who asked his father, an 8th, 9th grader, asked his father, he said, Dad, how many times have you read Bhagavad Gita? He said, two times at least. And I had gone there for a Bhagavad Gita lecture and his dad was driving me. And this smart aleck of his son, he says, are you that dumb that you have to hear it the 3rd time? He had a valid point. Though in an abrasive manner, he had a valid point. Are you that dumb to repeat it 3rd time? You repeat it not because you are dumb. You repeat it because at this moment of maturity, our understanding and depth of understanding is at one level. As with experiences we mature further, the same thing when gone through again, the depth of understanding is further nurtured. Therefore, you go through that study group again and again. It may be the same syllabus, but you go through it again and again. It reascertains certain principles again and again, and that reascertaining helps us put it in practice, and this knowledge or wisdom is handy rather than a posthumous reality. So the first solution is all these today, we have so much of data available that the video, audio have been posted on the websites. Go through them. Second, study group. Third is called Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya, self-study. Swasya adhyayana, studying one's own self. So consciously studying one's own activities, day-to-day activities, that let there not be even a moment that passes by unconsciously. Days after days pass by, wherein we don't even realize, oops, already a year passed by. And before you realize, 10 years passed by. And before you realize, you hit that 70s or 80s and you say, whole life passed by. What was I doing? We have lived unconsciously. That when you look back, there are not that many glorious moments of conscious living. So first meaning of Swadhyaya is conscious living. Second meaning, because of that conscious living, wherever you have flawed, wherever you have gone wrong, wherever you are restless, wherever you have been unrighteous, wherever you have, various such discrepancies, irregularities in life, jot them down. Look through as to where you went wrong, so that by the next time you go through that same kind of experience, because I believe that I've been repeating this fact, this is the third time I'm repeating, 95% of our life is a constant repeat. You wake up in the same house, you wake up on the same bed, you wake up surrounded by the same people, same husband, same wife, same children, same kitchen, same office, same route to the office, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, another pattern, but same patterns. Once in a while, long weekend. That long weekend also is a 3 days, 2 night package. That is how the travels are made. Right? That also is a pattern. You come back only tired, wishing that there was an extension to your long weekend. There was another vacation from vacation. That is a pattern. How much of our life is really a shock or a surprise or a twist? You go through the entire Mahabharata, Pandavas, every moment was a twist. Rama's every moment in life was a twist. Do we have that many twists in life? And we say, oh, such a horrible life I am leading. Compare it with both Ramayana and Mahabharata, you feel humbled. Oh, kuch nahi ho raha hai. ठीक है. 95% is a repeat mode. Right? Meaning your conscious availability of going through it or going through the messes of life or misses of life can immediately be reused into your life and perfect that process. How many times do you miss an exit to somebody's house? Please buy a GPS. Ask your other half to drive you. No, I said the better half, not the bitter half. How many times do you consciously miss an exit? Once, twice, maybe thrice. What do you call a person who is missing the same exit lifelong? How stupid can we be? That we repeat the same mistakes again and again and again. That means we are leading unconsciously. We have to correct somewhere, right? So that conscious living of Swadhyaya helps us rebuild ourselves. And in order to rebuild that Swadhyaya, through the Swadhyaya, the first two methods strengthen it. So I have these three methods. And this question has been asked so often that before you asked, I had the answer ready. It's one of those FAQs, or GFAQs, golden FAQs.
So sometimes when the karma, karma theory,
Principle.
Theory
is debatable.
Yeah, exactly.
Principles are not debatable.
Yeah. So, with people who don't accept it, or say, young people, teenagers, you're trying to help them to see that. Oftentimes I hear the point brought up that, oh, so you're saying this baby that died, of cancer, brought it upon herself? Is that what you're saying? Talk about this.
What was my disclaimer? This is exactly why I have my disclaimers in place.
Okay, so that's what you can say to them.
And that is the reason I start with this disclaimer.
Okay.
What was my disclaimer?
That it's applicable at a personal level. Not
First,
at a
understand
macro
it, apply it at a personal level, then you will see it at a global level. Don't immediately go at a global level and see the flaw, or try to prove it as a flaw, and miss the whole chunk of it as applicable in day-to-day life.
So that's something you can say at that point.
But having said that, when somebody goes through a troubled moment, to neglect a helping shoulder, saying it is what they have done wrong in their life they are going through, you will end up in the same condition sooner or later. Therefore, when somebody is going through a tough time, out of your humanness, you have to reach out of your righteousness, you have to reach out, help them. And many a times in reaching out, you don't even need to do something or give something. Just to give them the confidence that you are there with them is more than sufficient. Just being there with them is more than sufficient. 80 to 90%. That 20% that wherein you have to put that effort to say that, hey, everybody goes through it, but I'm there with you. Let me help you. Our Hindu philosophy is very profound, but it has, because of not understanding this later aspect of it, we have grown as bunch of idiots, as Hindus, who have grown as a society with apathy. Like if something happens to somebody, oh, uska prarabdha hai. It is his fate. What can we do? It ends up that way. That is how the entire. With such philosophy, you should have been somewhere. The entire Indian population is where we are, in spite of such smart brains. Because of the philosophy not understood right. So though I gave you a disclaimer, I still gave you the answer. Yes, sir.
Which brings me back to if something bad is happening to a child. If you put it like that, and like something the child's past experience is causing that to kind of boomerang on it. So the child is feeling that pain or the bad experience or the terminal illness or death or whatever because of something that
Point taken.
But the child does not. See, this is my question is, now, okay, I am older at this point, maybe in 5 years' time I will even accept and internalize, but at least I'm beginning to see a glimmer of that, catching that logic and saying, fine, at least I try to rationalize it. But I am not the child. How will the child understand? Because the child has no toolkit. the child is not even capable of understanding that this is happening to me because of something in my past. And what do you do in a situation like that? And it's not like, oh, somebody took my lunchbox. This is like
somebody took my life.
So it's bad. I mean, what do you do?
Most of this boils down from religions wherein they believe in one life. After coming to US is when I realized that gap. I'll come to your question, bear with me till then. Whenever I said there was tsunami, there were so many people dead, there were about 250,000 people dead, and after having said that, this was the impact, this is what happened, whether it was British, American, Canadian, Australian, all these news channels, and I browse, so I would listen to all these, and all of them would make a conclusion. These many number of children died. Among this, these many number of children died. Because their entire research and everything stems forth from the standpoint that we have one life. Their belief is we have one life. And why did they work so hard in stopping the infantile death ratio and to stop it? Is because their belief is they just had one life, and that one life, before even they could experience it, they're already done with. But whereas in a Hindu mindset, we have what is called rebirth. And the example taken by Bhagavan himself in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says, Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grunhati naroparani. The body is like the clothing that we wear. The body is like the clothing that we wear. As the clothing to the body is to the soul or the jiva. So we go to a gym. Do you go in this Indian clothes?
No.
You have gym clothes. You come to such satsang or go to a temple, there are temple clothes. If you go to an Indian environment, but it is a party, it's different clothes. How long do you wear those clothes? Some specific time, right? Some are long, some are short, some are to that purpose. As soon as you are done with it, you remove them, discard them, and then wear a next one. Some you may wear for 15 minutes, some you may wear entire day long. Right? Similarly, with respect to the body, that particular jiva, that particular soul, has to go through that particular part of experience.
Even though unconsciously.
They are not unconscious.
For a child, how would it be tabulated?
You mean unconscious? They may not be able to speak, but the jiva is conscious enough to go through the experience. They may not be expressive enough to speak or walk or run or do things on their own self, but the jiva is conscious of that experience. So much so that the jiva is also conscious of the experience of what goes through while he is growing in the mother's womb. They are not unconscious. But this logic should not stop us from stepping up, reaching out and helping them when in need.
Because we were put in the situation around, people who around it are put in the situation for that experience.
That experience itself.
That's the reason why we are there to begin with. I mean, if something happens to our kid or something, that is the reason why it has happened, because we are also part of that.
As much as it is the kids' prarabdha, it is the parents and the well-wishers' prarabdha also to go through that experience. Sometimes I tell people who are born with, say, mentally challenged or physically challenged kids. I said that child is born, that particular jiva is born to you because only parents like you would have handled this situation, and the child would have gotten the care and love which only you could give, nobody else could. Because it is equally both of their prarabdha. As much as it is your prarabdha to listen to what I am saying, it is my prarabdha to have all of you as listeners. It is not just one way, it is both ways. Yes, that would be the last question.
This is not a question, this is a comment. As to particularly similar this question. As part of my work, I take care of both children and adults with blood cancers. And some of the karma principles do apply on a global level.
No, it applies. But what happens is, before you understand it at a personal level, when you go global, there are some gaps which you will not be able to fathom and fill in. Therefore, I said first apply at a personal level. Continue.
Two comments. One is there was in life generally there's a lot of terms to describe people who've lost their husbands or wives or parents. There's no word in the English language to describe when somebody loses a child, because you're not meant to suffer like that. There was a lady in the UK, her name is Anthony Nolan, and he was diagnosed with leukemia back in the 80s. Back in the 80s, the only type of bone marrow transplant we did was from another child in the family, sibling. And this child was the only child, the parents tried, they couldn't have another child. This child is suffering with leukemia. Back then, no internet, only fax and all that. So this mom goes all over Europe, all over the UK, knocks on organizations and says, to complete strangers, can people donate their DNA sample to see if they are a match for my child? She does this for 3 years, and by that time, her child dies. But in those 3 years, she has mobilized and inspired so many people, because people thought, here she is, she could have made the choice to wallow in sorrow or just give up saying this is that. But she took this step of reaching out to people. And that created the Anthony Nolan Marrow Donor Program, which is in the UK. And right now there are 10 million bone marrow donors throughout the world. But it started from that mom. Today, half of the transplants I do are from donors who have no relation to the patient. It's all altruistic. And if you think of who is that person who sowed that seed, it was that mom. Yes, she did it for her own child. But it also says about, like you said, you don't have a choice of what circumstance you're dealt with. But how you face it, that makes all the difference. So that child physically is not alive, but we remember that child, that legacy of the child is still alive. So that's
a very good example.
And then the second point is, sometimes taking care of children, you get so humbled by how much strength they have, that even adults don't have that strength. Because as adults,